Yes, so we've started. Hi there, Richard. How are you?
Yes, very well. Thanks, Stephen. You?
Yeah, good. I was just looking at a question before we start on Facebook. Someone said, "Why are carnivores red? Why are they always red?" And I've never really noticed that, to be honest. Have you ever noticed that we're all red, us carnivores?
Well, you don't look red to me. It's yeah. I've always been fairly red-faced because of the volume of training and things that I do. I've always either just been in the gym or go into the gym. But beyond that, the thermic effect of protein. So protein increases the thermic effect. It allows us to lose fat at a quicker rate, but it could possibly be due, down to that. But yeah, I can't think of any other carnivore that I know who's red in the face other than myself, maybe after a workout. But I was also on the bike for 60 miles yesterday, so hence the red face. I've been out in the sun, so
Yeah, I think it might be going out in the sun simply without sun cream.
Yeah, well, a lot of the carnivores from the States live in sunny environments, don't they? So they're always well tanned. They always look clean and healthy. Yeah, I wish I was one of them, but yeah, certainly being out in the sun is a massive contributing factor, I think, to being
Yeah.
red in the face or a little bit tanned.
How are you getting on with the continual glucose monitor?
That packed in a lot earlier than I was expecting it to. So it gave up the ghost after it was meant to last, I think, 14 days. I think 6 days in, it packed in. Yeah, some interesting information, but pretty much what we expected to see in regards to, glucose responses and things. I tried various different products to see if they elicited any glucose response, sweeteners like erythritol and stevia, because in some people, we can get what's called a sylvatic response, where even though there's no carbohydrate or sugar in that product, the second the sweet hits the tongue, as it were, it elicits this glucose response or insulin response. Because the body believes that sugar, something sweet, is coming. But mine didn't. So stevia products and erythritol products had zero impact on my blood glucose. The training that I did at the time, I was at Kempton running a 10K. And after 40 minutes of running at 91% of my VO2 max, my blood glucose was 10.7, I think, which just encourages me in regards to the fact that when we are competing as athletes or in life in general, the body creates glucose when it needs to. Now, we'd expect to see an insulin or blood glucose increase in any athlete initially when they begin high-intensity workouts, because the glycogen in the muscle is released, and this elicits that response in the blood. But I don't consume carbohydrate. So where did mine come from? And the key to that is the body will create glycogen even if you're ketogenic, and arguably at a higher rate. So my body managed to put my blood glucose over 10, irrespective of not consuming carbohydrate. I did that run fasted. So I was completely fasted for maybe 16 hours coming into that run, and I managed to run at 91% of VO2 max for 40 minutes. And I did not bonk, I did not crash, I did not crave. Everyone else along the run was having to put energy gels and energy tonics and sweets and all sorts back in. But and the same coming off track here a little bit. But I did a 60-mile bike ride yesterday, which is the second longest ride I've ridden to date. It felt a lot more difficult yesterday because of the temperature. But I did that again fasted. I was probably 16 hours again fasted, give or take. In fact, it was probably longer because we left a little bit later. We were out for quite a long time. One of the guys had a nasty accident, unfortunately. He broke his nose and split his lip, and I had to go into hospital. Not that I'm trying to put anyone off cycling. but these things happen. They are few and far between. But we had to stop in regards to that. So the ride was a long ride. I think we were out for 4, maybe 5 hours because of this this accident. Again, everyone else was carb loading. We stopped off with him at a local cafe to organize a lift, because I think he was, even though he would admit it, he was concussed and certainly couldn't be riding again with a split lip in that heat. So all I did was electrolytes and water, and everybody else was stuffing their face with energy gels and cakes and sweets. And towards the end of the ride, because it was a looped ride, a lot of the riders sort of filtered off partway through this. Some were making the excuse that I hope they're not listening to this. Some were making the excuse that they had to be home and they had things to do. But I think it was just because it was so warm and they were starting to struggle. But we carried on. 4 of us continued, and it got down to just the four riders in the end, from 11 or 12, I believe. And right at the end of that ride, one of the guys that was with me, who is a carb athlete, he began to bonk severely, over the last couple of miles. And even though my legs were fatigued from the run, the half marathon I did last week, my energy wasn't. My energy never comes into question. My energy is always there, ready to go. My legs were fatigued, but this is because I'm not used to using my legs in that respect, in regards to that level of intensity on a bike. I've never ridden before, or ran before, so my legs were paying the price. But beyond that, my energy was through the roof. So yeah, gone off a little bit track from the glucose monitor there, but I did experiment a little bit with it. It's not like me at all, is it, to go off track?
No.
But stevia, erythritol elicited no response. And I was just, I think coming back to what we discovered in regards to that run, it's what we knew all along. The body will create glycogen, and muscle glycogen, and arguably at a higher rate. So we can compete at high intensity, we can compete at low intensity. I still can't see any argument for carbohydrate in athletic performance whatsoever. It'd be interesting, because I released an interview yesterday with Sean Sakonovsky, who's an endurance cyclist. He's completely carb-free, carnivore, keto carnivore. He works closely with Professor Tim Noakes. And I know that Tim Noakes has recommended possibly the implementation of carbohydrate at high intensity or long distances. Only small, but over sort of a marathon distance, in the last segment of the run, he recommended to a client of mine to maybe, there might be preference for carbohydrate. I'd love to get him on with us, or a podcast, to quiz him further with that, because every time I look into that avenue, there seems no reason to put carbohydrate in when you are fully adapted. I just can't see the benefit, and I've experimented for years and years. But I'm open to learning. I'm open to suggestion. So if anybody has any scientific evidence behind that, we know that being ketogenic and carnivore is far superior. Anybody living in the space that is performed at intensity or long distance, any athletic performance, knows that we can do so a lot more efficiently. But if anybody out there does have any information on maybe co-consuming carbohydrate along with that and eliciting a benefit, I'd love to take a look at it, but I'm yet to find it myself.
Yeah, I can't find it, to be honest, and I get very interested in studies, for instance, that look at the replenishment of glycogen and taking muscle biopsies, and there seems to be absolutely zero benefit not zero benefit. Let's rephrase that. If you're fat adapted, there doesn't seem to be any reason to take in dietary carbohydrates. That's possibly the best thing. I think when people are watching other influencers and they're watching people that they respect, maybe well-known personal trainers or celebrity personal trainers, and they talk about that you have to have carbohydrates, they always leave out the word dietary. because the body needs carbohydrates. I mean, as Richard just said there, mate, it makes it. So making carbohydrates is very different to eating carbohydrate. And I do have a study, which I'm going to paraphrase awfully because I haven't got it to hand. I will try and get it to hand. I've got something else to hand. I'll show you in a second. Where they looked at different athletes, and some were carb loaded and some were totally fasted, and they were very variant, but they were all athletes, and they were all sort of top end athletes, I suppose, in the top 10%, maybe not the top 1%, but top 10%. And they noticed that their glycogen replenishment was absolutely the same. I mean, and it didn't matter if they were fasted, if they were carb loaded, like I say, if they were carb athletes, fat adapted, it just was the same. And that's because the body is a physiological machine that definitely knows what it's doing. So, I mean, we should let it. I want to just do a little screen share just for people, because you were talking about your glucose monitor, and we have got a couple of questions, so I will get to that. But I just wanted, while it's fresh in everyone's memory, to just go into this to show people the blood sugar ranges, because Richard was talking about these different ranges, and I just want people to see. Let me just get rid of that. There we go. So these are the American measures, and these are the English. Didn't really say it like that, but these are the two different ways of measuring your blood glucose. But in the main, it's American or European, if you want. So what was your blood glucose when you were training? Where did it go up to?
Unmute 10.7 after the race.
There you go. So you're not diabetic, obviously. You are just, it's a demand. Your body is demanding that amount of glucose. So I think that's the thing. Do you remember how long it took to get back down to what I hate all these things. I mean, I made this graph, by the way. So I'm saying normal blood sugar, but really it's blood sugar. I mean, this is just, where was you after about 2 hours?
After 2 hours, it fell back into what my normal range was. My normal range, it was somewhere between 3.8 and 4.8. I'm sure it was 4 point something as a standard. So where are we on there with you? So
80.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we are.
Cool.
In the US measure. So that's where it sat with me for days prior to doing that run. But it increased to 10.7 without me consuming any carbohydrate whatsoever, completely fasted. Which, as we said prior, is proof positive that the body creates glucose. It'll create any glucose that it needs. Gluconeogenesis is demand driven, and muscle glycogen will replenish itself as and when it needs to. But yeah, it was that was a bit of fun. I know one of the things that we said was, did it leave a piece of metal in my arm?
Yes.
Yeah, so when I pulled it out, the little piece that went in was still there. So I'm hoping that means that there wasn't anything. But yeah, I did question, whether I should put another one in moving forward. I'm all for experimenting. But yeah, I don't want to be leaving pieces of steel in my arm. But yeah, nothing was left in, so I'd be happy to put another one on.
Good. James there, how long would it take for a carb athlete to adapt to keto, and how long will the slump last? Thank you both.
So yeah, it depends on how strict you were going to be as an athlete. If you're going to do incremental changes, and it could take quite some time. But I regard adaptation as being anywhere between sort of 3 to 6 months. And you can upregulate this a little bit quicker by increasing or stimulate through high intensity exercise. So this will stimulate the monocarboxylate transporters. So what we try to do typically when we're adapting is we ease off the workouts and we try to steady in, and that's fine, but it will take a little bit longer. But if you hit the high intensity and force your body, it forces these adaptations through the MCTs or the monocarboxylate transporters. 3 to 6 months. I think if you've been dabbling in low carb prior to that, it'll be a lot quicker. I believe that we can upregulate and fast track it through the supplementation of exogenous ketones, because they work as a signaling molecule. They'll signal the body to ramp up these adaptations quicker when used correctly. But again, you're still talking, a few months. So I think for a low carb athlete coming into this, or someone who's dabbled with low carb, they can probably adapt within 3 months. But the high intensity exercise is key to fast tracking that adaptation process. And the supplementation or usage of salts is really important as well. This is the reason that most people fail quite early on in their journey. We need sodium, we need potassium. And when we initiate a low carb lifestyle, the kidneys release this sodium from the body, which leads to what's called keto flu. So electrolytes or salts, pink Himalayan or Celtic sea salt, super important. And again, that's another thing that we're told to avoid, isn't it? We're told to watch out for our salt. Salt is essential for life. We cannot live without salt. And I quite literally plaster all of my meals in buckets of salt.
Yeah. I mean, I've just got into the Celtic sea salt, and it's beautiful as well. It's very tasty. And I noticed James has said adapting to keto, but don't forget carnivore is a ketogenic way of eating. So we're not necessarily just saying keto, we're just saying being ketogenic, actually, I think. Occasionally being in ketosis. I agree with you, Richard. I mean, there's still variables, and I never like to give people a false number. So I always err on the side of caution. I always say 20 weeks plus or minus 6. So you could be as quick as 14 weeks. But there are people that have been quicker than that, and there are also people that are taking a lot longer. And I think it is down to strictness, how long you've been on that previous way of eating. Let's say you were vegan for 15 years compared to someone that was on a Mediterranean diet. Ridiculous labels, but there you go. For 15 years, it's going to be different because you've been eating animal products for 15 years and the other one hasn't. So too many variables to give you an exact number. But I think electrolyte balance is really important. Making sure you have enough protein, not being scared of fat. And the word slump made me laugh, because whenever you adapt, your performance may suffer, but that's part of the adaptation period. So when you get athletes training at high altitude, at first they struggle, and then they very often become much better than they were previously at high altitude. That tends to happen. Then when they come back to their normal altitude, there's a little bit of overhang where they're quite good, but so what I'm saying is the body is continually adapting to your situation, using that as an environmental marker. So yeah, you just got to keep on it and not worry about the alleged slump. It's just adaptation. It's a bit like trying to learn a new serve in tennis. Sorry to use that, but that's it's one of my games. If someone's looked at this happened to me, by the way, looked at your serve and think you can improve it in some way. I was best friends with a tennis coach, and he was absolutely convinced that my serve was just too from the street to be any good. I'd won a singles title by this time, and he tried to redo my serve to be a proper serve. And for 6 months, I believed in it. I mean, I believed in the principle and the science, and watching people use this way of serving. I got it all, and the ball would be slightly higher when I hit it and everything, and I couldn't do it. And my game suffered and suffered and suffered. And after 6 months, I just gave up. So probably not the best story to talk about, but full transparency, I just couldn't do it. There's a lot more mechanics in that, by the way, and confidence as well. And also, I was losing games that I knew I would win if I could serve like I used to. But this is the best part of it. I stuck to it. I did stick to it. I didn't think, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to go back to the old way. I really gave it a really good try. And I think with this way of eating, you're not losing games. You're not frustrated. You're living in your own body. There's no other outside influence. So, 20 weeks, 26 weeks maximum. Anyway, that's good. That's a good question. I think we've got somebody else that it's your fan club today, Richard, coming through. So yeah, the fat addict, that's Adam, isn't it? I think people are too scared to trust keto sometimes because it's drummed into us for so long that we need carbs to train.
Yeah, it is. It comes back down to glycogen. So in the 1960s, scientists discovered that muscle glycogen is what allows us to be athletic. That's what fuels the muscle. It allows us to contract the muscle, in these sporting events or our chosen sport, as it were. We know the carbohydrates break down into sugar, into glucose, and this glucose is stored in the muscle as glycogen. So it was deemed that carbohydrate was the best way to replenish our glycogen stores. Yes, glucose or carbs breaks down into glucose. Glucose replenishes our glycogen stores, but it was so obvious that this was the mechanism for replenishing glycogen stores, the scientists never even tried to look to see if the body had another mechanism to do it. And we do. Our natural mechanism. We've lived in a ketogenic state our entire existence, and we would have spent days hunting and tracking an animal, and we would have needed power in our legs and endurance, within our muscles to wear down and track and kill this animal. Fasted, we would have done this for days without eating. So it does not make sense to be in a fed state in order to survive. So this is the way that we've done it our entire existence. The body will build this glycogen up naturally, and it will, as Stephen said, that within these studies, muscle glycogen is either at an equal level or higher in a carb adapted athlete to a ketogenic athlete. But yeah, it's been drummed into us. We're told that we need carbs to build muscle. We're told we need carbs for energy. We're told that we need carbs for the brain. And all of these, are a fallacy, if you like, because the body can create this naturally in all aspects of this. So no carbs required.
It's a good question, isn't it? I mean, the thing is, we need to be aware of lots of myths, basically. By the way, thank you, Bill, for becoming a member, which is very good. So we've got another big question. You'll find this one interesting. James is also concerned about saturated fats increasing cholesterol. Can you give any advice, please?
Yeah. So first of all, I mean, this is for you and I, Stephen. This is one of those questions that almost becomes laughable, isn't it, when someone says, well, what about my cholesterol? My usual reply to that is, well, what about your cholesterol? Mine is double figures, and I wish it were higher. Cholesterol is essential for life. It's essential for cell formation, cell communication, nutrient absorption, nutrient transportation. It's essential for healing. It's essential for the production of hormones. Every cell within the body is made of it, and we cannot live without cholesterol. So to lower cholesterol would be detrimental to our health. This comes from falsified research done in the 1950s by a scientist called Ansel Keys, where he traveled around the world and released the 7-country study. These countries consumed foods that were high in saturated fat, and he showed a correlation between these this consumption of saturated fat and cardiovascular disease. This was adopted by the Senate McGovern and the American Heart Association, and this is why we believe the saturated fats are bad for us. But that research was falsified, and this is fact. This isn't conspiracy theory. You can Google this. It's been documented numerous times by places like the New York Times. So this isn't conspiracy theory. This is fact. Ansel Keys was bribed the equivalent of $50,000 in today's money in order to remove those 7 countries, or the 14 countries, apologies, because he actually went to 21. So the original study was the 21-country study. Now, the other 14 countries showed that the higher your saturated fat intake, the lower your risk of cardiovascular disease. So Mr. Kellogg's and Nestle and the Sugar Association didn't want to miss out on sales. So this is where this bribery came in, if you like, and we still believe to this day. But cholesterol, as I say, is essential for life, and it can increase when we become ketogenic and carnivore for a number of mechanisms. The main one is that when we become ketogenic, we are actively removing seed oils, vegetable oils, sunflower oil, safflower oil, rapeseed oil, grapeseed oil. These are all high in an oxidized omega-6 called linoleic acid, which causes oxidation and damages cells within the body. But these come from seeds which are high in phytosterols. Now, phytosterols artificially lower our cholesterol. So when people see an increase in cholesterol from becoming ketogenic or carnivore, it's not an increase from the diet. It's more that the body is going back to its natural physiological level. It's just increasing cholesterol to where it should be. Now, when it comes down to cholesterol, we are told that HDL is good for us and LDL is bad, but LDL protects the body, LDL repairs the body and heals the body. So that doesn't sound so dangerous to me, but LDL can become damaged. It can become glycated through excess carbohydrate consumption, and it can become oxidized through excess seed oil consumption. And it's this glycation and oxidation that actually damages our LDL particles. So what typically happens is the liver will release cholesterol in the form of LDL, or very low density lipoprotein. This VLDL will travel through the body, dropping off its lipid cargo in order to heal and repair the body. So, and you did hear that correctly. LDL heals and repairs the body, and then it travels back to the liver, where the liver will recycle it and send it back on its merry way again to heal and repair the body. Now, the issue is that when we consume excess carbohydrate, that this causes glycation. This causes our LDL particles to become sticky, and these vegetable and seed oils cause oxidation. Now, each LDL particle has an ApoB100 receptor. Every particle has one of them, and it's this receptor that's recognized as like an access card to the liver. So as it travels around the body and it returns back to the liver, it's this receptor, this ApoB100 receptor, that the liver recognizes and opens its doors and allows it access. But through glycation and oxidation, this ApoB100 becomes damaged, and it's no longer allowed access. So it continues to build in the bloodstream, but it's still trying to perform its main duty by healing and repairing. So it'll come across a damaged arterial wall, for example, and it'll travel into the subendothelial space, where it will try to drop off its lipid cargo in order to heal and repair. But in the subendothelial space, there are cells called macrophages. Now, these macrophages contain something called a scavenger receptor. This scavenger receptor recognizes this damaged ApoB100 receptor and allows this particle access when the liver wouldn't. Now, this cell, this macrophage, pulls this damaged LDL particle in, and more, crams them in until they grow into a foam cell. And it's this foam cell that's the start of an atherosclerotic plaque. But it's not cholesterol that's caused the damage to the arterial wall in the first place. That comes back to glycation and oxidation. Glycation, again, from carbohydrates, particularly from grains, and oxidation, particularly from these seed oils. So the two things that we're told to consume to be heart healthy, the grains and seed oils, are the two main contributing factors to cardiovascular disease. Now, cholesterol is, again, essential for life. And part of the production of cholesterol is known as the mevalonate pathway. This is one step after we produce ketones. So when we consume excess or fat, either from dietary fat or body fat, we produce beta-hydroxybutyrate, as well as the other ketone bodies. And when we produce too much of these, this can trigger the mevalonate pathway to maybe increase cholesterol slightly. But this is nothing to be concerned about, in my opinion, because, again, cholesterol heals and repairs the body. So there's two mechanisms there which may allow the body to increase cholesterol, but it's not something to be concerned about. Cholesterol is, again, essential for life. So it's coming away from all of these common myths and misconceptions and understanding that cholesterol is required. We need it. This is why I work with a lot of perimenopausal females and menopausal. And one of the biggest contributing factors to this is lack of saturated fats throughout the years. And what I find with a lot of the perimenopausal women that I work with is that when they adopt a ketogenic lifestyle, they become more regular. So again, the second you give the body what it needs, your body starts to work and function the way that it should. And that's what living the ketogenic lifestyle is. It's just a case of supplying the body with all of the nutrients that we need, not just to survive, but thrive. And touching back on what you said earlier, Stephen, again, carnivore is a ketogenic state. It's just another variation. And I don't know about you, but I get a lot of backlash within the community sometimes in regards to, it's not keto, this is carnivore, and one or the other. But they are the same metabolic state. One is just a better version of living a ketogenic lifestyle, but they are both they are the one and the same, the metabolic state of ketosis. And you and I have gravitated into a more animal-based or carnivore type ketogenic state, if you like, because we've removed further toxins, not just the grains, the oxidized omega-6s, and from the seed oils and the lectins and things from the grains. We have delved deeper into this rabbit hole and removed the oxalates and these other phytosterols and phytoalexins. And so we have just gravitated deeper and deeper into that hole. But I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, that's a nice short answer. I mean, there is so much more to it. I think you sort of mentioned it, but everything that you're told about cholesterol and saturated fat is predicated on a lie, on fraud, as you did mention there. But I'll just give you some facts and dates if you want to look it up, James. So 1948, Ansel Keys started his research, okay? In 1948, they didn't even know about LDL or HDL, IDL or VLDL. They had no idea. In fact, fat and cholesterol synthesis was really took into its own sort of strata of the thing about LDL and HDL in the 1960s. So firstly, they were dealing with something they didn't really know much about. And then when you get to 1954, there's a thing called the Scientific Symposium, and Ansel Keys had studied dietary cholesterol. And what his study actually said, and I'm going to quote it, does not raise cholesterol. Dietary cholesterol does not raise cholesterol levels in the blood, nor does it have any effect on atherosclerosis in man. Okay, so that's the Scientific Symposium 1954. So that's when he just decided that his theory, well, it's a big oops, basically, at least he made a mistake. At least he admitted that experiments and field studies had shown that there was no difference in those levels. And we know that because we talk about the fact that if you lower dietary cholesterol, your body makes more. So that's where we get that from Ansel Keys, from his studies in the Scientific Symposium in 1954. So he then just said, well, it must be saturated fat, just a sort of glib thing that is causing coronary heart disease, basically. So then if you want to go to 1968 to 1973, there was a thing called the Minnesota Coronary Experiment. Okay, reducing saturated fat and reducing cholesterol did not lower incidence of cardio heart disease. So that was George Mann, the Framingham founder. All right. So all this stuff, I've got notes if people want all these notes. But what they did see, that a 1% drop in cholesterol led to an increase in incidence of death. This was a randomized controlled trial. And this is the one that wasn't published for 40 years. All right. So that's pretty damning. So are you concerned about saturated fats? Yes, I am. Not having enough of them would be my concern. Increasing cholesterol, would I be concerned about that? No, I'd be wanting increased cholesterol, and that's because my thoughts are not predicated on this fraudulent claim from Ansel Keys and people around the area. And there was loads of people that were trying to fight against all this misinformation. Yudkin was a scientist in Britain who was absolutely convinced it was sugar, but instead of fighting with facts, they discredited him. That sounds similar to some situations recently, doesn't it? But anyway, so there you go. And we've got that. Cholesterol is just a way for the health boards to try and champion their own agenda and their own medications, I would say. But I think that was a pretty clear answer, don't you, Richard?
Yeah, for
You happy
sure.
with that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we could go to town on cholesterol. There's when I give talks on cholesterol, I think they usually last sort of 20 to 30 minutes when we go through specific things. So that was the shock. We've nailed the main points there for sure.
Yeah, I think we did. So yeah, Sunny is using a continual glucose monitor, working on reversing pre-type 2 diabetes, 6.2. So I haven't got my conversion chart, but yeah, that's sort of about 100. Did a 5K fasted, but we haven't got any levels there. Took your monitor with you to test blood glucose levels during the race. Be interested.
I think it's in the next. Is it in the next one down at the highest?
Oh, hang on. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yes. Here we go. At my highest, my blood glucose levels went to 220. Thank you. And look at this. We've got US and American. Thank you for that. And then down to 96. No negative side effects. Didn't eat carbs after the race, but drank sugar-free electrolytes. Brilliant. That's great. Thank you so much. Right. I'm scared to reveal the next question because Richard might be here until next Sunday. So let's have a go.
Yeah.
Is it true that selenium in fish can counteract the harmful effects of mercury?
Yeah, I believe so. We'll keep that short and sweet. But the best thing about selenium is that it helps with the conversion of T4 into T3. So it helps produce hormones, which is one of the things coming back to these menopausal women. But yeah, I believe so. I mean, I eat a lot of fish. I'm not concerned overly about mercury content. I do try to go for, or in fact, I do go for fresh, wild caught fish. I do enjoy a lot of tuna, which we're told is awfully high in mercury. But selenium will prevent the absorption of a lot of the mercury in there. So I certainly wouldn't be put off through eating your tuna or any other fish for that matter. Fish is so important for us. It's not just for the omega-3s, but that's why I eat an awful lot of it. So there's a lot of carnivores that will avoid the consumption of fish and things, but omega-3s in particular are so much more important than we're led to believe. But we can get a lot of omega-3s from our animal proteins, as in beef and things as well. But we all know that that one of the best sources are our oily fish, mackerel being one of the better ones, sardines and salmon. And study after study shows the impact of these omega-3s on the brain, EPA and DHA. So don't be put off by your fish. It's almost a case of you start eating healthy and somebody will tell you something to try to put you off consuming these foods with some sort of study. Red meat causes cancer. There's too much mercury in tuna. And what are they comparing this to exactly? Because just go back to eating the crap you were eating before, and you'll soon start to realize the benefit that the benefits that you are getting from eating these highly nutrient dense foods. But I eat lots of fish. Love my fish.
Yeah, I've just had scallops actually, and shellfish, eggs contain selenium. If you're interested in selenium, fish themselves contain selenium. A chicken breast has 100% of your recommended daily allowance of selenium. Just a 6-ounce chicken breast. Turkey's pretty much there. Beef, pork, all of those. By the way, I'm not a big fan of recommended daily allowances. And the thing is, all the phrases when we talk about pre-diabetic, diabetic, or high cholesterol, as Richard said brilliantly earlier, no, it's not high. It's where it should be. But as soon as you add high, it sounds like it's problematic. Whereas what we should be saying is, your cholesterol now at 220 is sort of where it should be. That's it. But as soon as you put that pejorative term in, when you say it's high cholesterol, it sounds like it's a bad thing when it absolutely isn't a bad thing. But anyway, your pork, beef, turkey, chicken, fish, shellfish, eggs all have selenium in. Right. Nice question coming up from Matthew. Oh, by the way, Richard, I'm only teasing you. If you take 40 minutes to answer, it's great. I'm happy. I'm happy with a full answer. My pet hate actually is glib answers that don't really get into the mechanism. If someone says, is it true that selenium fish can counteract the harmful effects of mercury? If we both went yes, it would be a bit boring. And people want to know, well, why is that? And why is that not talked about? So yeah, here we go. Nice one from Matthew. Do you watch any bodybuilders on YouTube?
No, to be honest, there's not an awful lot of people that I do follow on YouTube or Instagram or anywhere. Obviously, I follow your good self, Stephen. I follow a couple of other people that I've been working with recently, in the likes of Anthony Chaffee and things. But I quite early on in doing this realized that I didn't agree with a lot of the processes that these other bodybuilders or so-called nutritional experts or gurus were touting. And I found it incredibly difficult to watch their content being posted, and I found it difficult not to comment on their post. And I'm not that type of person to go on to someone else's feed and say that they've I know it's one of Bart Kay's favorite things, isn't it? Jump on someone's post, and that's great, but it's not the way that I try to go about things. So no, I don't follow. To be honest, since I've come away from bodybuilding in May last year, I couldn't tell you what's going on in the world of bodybuilding whatsoever. Yeah, it's now that I've come away from it, it's my energies are focused in other places, if you like. And yeah, that's a part of my life that I may come back to. But it isn't something that I'm focused on in the short term. My short-term goals, as always, are to increase my knowledge in regards to health, well-being, and nutrition, teach other people about what I've learned in regards to health, well-being, and nutrition, get that message out there as best as I can, and to continue to push my business forward to enable me to do those things in regards to teaching and educating other people. So much of my day is spent researching, and I think I've probably forgotten well more than I've ever learned. So sometimes I'll take time out just to go back and revisit things that I've learned previously. I've got a book that I jot things down into, and I'll go back and revisit these things. But in regards to followers or following other people, I do not. Apologies. Yeah, I could not tell you what's going on in the world of bodybuilding currently. It's something that doesn't appear on my feed anymore. I've just removed myself from it for now, but you never know. Yeah. Maybe I'll make a return in a few years.
I don't know if I can see that picture there. That's oh yeah, I might be able to. That's me with Sonny Smith years ago when I was doing bodybuilding, and he was a professional bodybuilder. That's a terrible photograph. I don't think I can make it any clearer. But I was really quite fanatic, and I was very interested. I did my one and done show in my 20s, natural, completely natural. So yeah, I was interested in it, going to shows, meeting the guys. Sean Ray, I was very lucky. Went to Gold's Gym as a tourist, nothing special, and managed to train next to Sean Ray, not with Sean Ray, but it was on the equipment next to me. So that was interesting, but that was a millennium away. I mean, it was 30 years ago. I'm sort of interested in comments from bodybuilders, but I don't follow any in particular. I mean, Robert Sykes, obviously, I would call him a bodybuilder. I follow Robert, Colt Milton, and we got obviously the composition consultant. So people like that I'm very interested in. The professional side of things, not so much. Just real people that are carnivores that are bodybuilding and looking great. So that's the extent of my interest in that respect. But when people from my time get on and talk about what they used to do, so Dorian Yates, someone like that, I'd probably listen to what he's got to say about training. And not a big fan of Schwarzenegger anymore. I think he's completely changed since his screw your freedom thing, when he was ridiculous and coming out with quite a lot of rubbish. That's put me off him quite a lot. So anyway, but but I would obviously trust his opinion on weight training because he definitely knew what he was doing. So there you go. Very mixed bag of questions. So this is good. So I'll field this one first, if you don't mind, Richard, because I spoke to Judy Cho and I tried to get her on before the summit, but she's just too busy to do it. Luckily, she's coming on to the live stream on the Sunday, the 9th of July. I will be watching the summit. I think it's a great idea. It's just a week of different interviews, very much like our guest list. There's a few people that we haven't got that they've got, and we've got a few people they haven't got. So over the next few weeks, Carnivore is going to have a huge presence with lots of doctors and scientists and influencers talking about carnivore. So I think she's done a great job there. Her book, I think it's the Carnivore Cure, actually, is amazing and very scientific. I like what Judy does because she talks about things that other people don't really talk about, even things like food coloring and preservatives, and really goes into the nitty gritty and how ridiculous it is that some are still allowed. So I love what she does. So I'm really excited, firstly, to have her onto the live stream, but I really think that the Carnivore Summit is something that I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to catching up with a few of the influencers that don't do that much public speaking. It's always nice to hear from people that you can't hear from often. So yeah, I'll definitely watch a bit of that.
Fantastic. Yeah, for me, I'll probably not. Unfortunately, my day is spent working continuously. Unfortunately, in fact, I can't remember the last time that I think it was 7 years ago. I've probably had a day off.
Yeah, I remember it.
Genuinely, yeah. It's self-employment is tough, but I've got a jam-packed couple of weeks ahead, unfortunately. So it's all hands on deck for me. I'll be traveling to Yeovil on Friday with Phil the Power Taylor, ready for a Channel 5 interview. So Channel 5 have asked to do an interview with me on Phil Taylor's new diet and lifestyle. And we're there to support him and answer any questions to any guests and people who are up there to support Phil and watch the other players. And we'll be doing a little speaking thing there in regards to health and well-being for those who are interested. So if anybody wants to attend that in Yeovil next weekend, I will be there to answer any questions.
Wow, I didn't know you were a celebrity, Richard.
I know.
You're going to be on the telly. It's amazing.
I know.
And you've got Phil the Power Taylor, for those that don't know, in darts. He was the world's greatest darts player, but he's gone on to a low-carb lifestyle and lost weight and done really well. And he'll be on the live stream. So that's good. There we are, Adam. These people who say not to eat fish will be sitting there eating their donuts and drinking Coke as they tell you this. That is very true sometimes. Yeah. Nice. James likes his very broad questions, doesn't he? And the reason I read them out is not because Richard can't read them for himself. It's because this goes out as an audio podcast. So we need some context. So James has asked, how does fasting benefit you? Now, I don't know if he means Richard in general or me in general, but I'm thinking he's meaning people in general. How does fasting benefit people, I think?
Yeah, so fasting is an incredible tool for a number of reasons. We as a society eat far too much too often. We don't give our digestive system a chance to break or to relax. Bodybuilders, for example, coming back to the bodybuilding question, the average lifespan of a bodybuilder in America is 12 years lower than the average American, which is arguably low anyway. Many will put this down to supplement choices in regards to steroids, which, a lot of the pro bodybuilders, or in fact anybody at that pro level, I think is safe to say, and they openly would admit that that's what they take and supplement with, which is one of the reasons I decided to come away from bodybuilding. for me, it would have meant going down that route, and it's something. I'm not against it, but it's something that I would have had to have considered, and it's not a choice that something that I wanted to implement. But bodybuilders are told to eat every 2 hours. They're told to eat every 2 hours because of the activation of mTOR. mTOR is a growth pathway. It allows the body to grow and repair. But elevated mTOR or mTOR elevation for an extended period of time can have a detrimental impact on IGF-1. IGF-1 is directly linked to cancers and tumors. Excess activation can lower lifespan, increase tumors, cancers, and cause all sorts of issues within the body. So this having breaks in between the activation of mTOR. mTOR does build muscle, but we can activate this through the mTOR reset, which occurs every 4 hours. So the best way to activate mTOR would be to consume a high-protein meal, which contains lots of leucine, around 3 grams to activate mTOR. mTOR will be activated, and then if we do not consume food for 3 hours, it resets and we can activate it again. So we can do this a few times throughout the day while fasting. Now, this lowers IGF-1, and in fact, the activation of mTOR through leucine, I think, elicits next to no response in IGF-1. But this break from this constant activation, so we can either be in the activation in a growth pathway of mTOR activation, or we can be in AMPK or fasting. Now, both are required. We need to give our bodies a chance to heal and repair. And that's what fasting does. It allows us to clean out the old, sick and dying cells and create new, younger, stronger, fitter, faster ones. If you think of your body as a photocopying machine that takes a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy, this photocopy becomes less visible and deteriorates over time. And this is what happens to your cells. And this is what happens in this constant activation of mTOR. But when we are fasting, the body will clean out these old, sick and dying cells, and it'll create these new, younger, stronger, fitter, faster ones. Almost in this, I think Ben Azadi, in an interview that I'd done with him, you compared it to cleaning out, the old moldy foods in the fridge and replacing it with fresh food. And that's exactly what you're doing. But the beauty of activating AMPK or being in a fasted state is that it'll elicit this state of autophagy, mitophagy, which is autophagy in the mitochondria, brown fat activation, which allows us to burn body fat through an uncoupling process. So it uncouples our white fat cells and it allows us to burn body fat. So it elicits this brown fat activation through UCP1. And it also increases lipolysis, so more activation of the fat cells and allows us to burn fat, so we can lose weight through doing this. But it also puts us deeper into a ketogenic state, and it increases the level of beta-hydroxybutyrate, which is superior energy for the brain, the body, and the heart. The brain is made up of beta-hydroxybutyrate. The matter within the brain was once BHB that has crossed the blood-brain barrier. BHB increases mechanical efficiency of the heart by as much as 75% and blood flow by as much as 25%. But being in this state of autophagy to extended periods of time can also increase things like human growth hormone by as much as 2,000% and testosterone by as much as 400%. So these bodybuilders who were in this constant activation of mTOR in order to grow didn't need to do it for that long. They could elicit this response through autophagy, through fasting. They inject with things like testosterone and human growth hormone, and we can get this naturally. We can allow our bodies to produce at crazy levels through fasting. I think at 72 hours, it was human growth hormone was increased by 2,000% and around 470%, I think, or something through testosterone, which is absolutely incredible. So there's lots of benefits to be had through fasting, and it also clear out amyloid plaques. It will help clear things like stretch marks and skin conditions in regards to cellulite and things. So I was once clinically obese. I lost an awful lot of weight, 107 pounds, just 7.5 stone. I had stretch marks through my belly. I had stretch marks on my arms, on the corner of my arms. And a friend asked me one day, where or how did you get rid of your stretch marks? Or have you ever had any? I had lots and lots, and then I realized through pictures of competing from years and years that these stretch marks had disappeared. And I put this down to living a healthy lifestyle, a clean lifestyle, ketogenic carnivore lifestyle, but more importantly, implementing fasting on a daily basis, where I would do a minimum of sort of 12 hours, average about 16. I'd throw in a 24-hour a couple of times a year, and I'd also do a 72-hour fast a few times throughout the year. And the complete opposite used to occur to my energy and my brain. You'd think that days without eating would make you tired and hungry. Day 3, your energy is absolutely on fire. Your energy is through the roof. You've got so much energy, you don't know what to do with it. Your mental clarity is crystal clear. It's almost a euphoric state that I can't explain unless you try it yourself. But lots of health benefits in regards to removing amyloid plaques and things, as well as these stretch marks. So it cleans and heals and repairs the body. It's a state that we need. We need a balance of AMPK and mTOR. And the best way to do this, so if you were the type of person who likes to eat, then fast throughout the night. I don't fast on purpose anymore. I eat when I'm hungry. I eat intuitively, but I will consume food just before bed, which goes against what everybody else will tell you. But the body heals and repairs just before bed. So this is why I always eat before bed. If I go to bed hungry, I don't eat. And I think of lions and tigers and cheetahs in the wild, carnivores, just the way we are. We hunt, track, kill an animal. What does a cheetah do after consuming that food? It goes and has a nap. So it doesn't make sense for me to go to bed hungry. I go to bed on a full belly, and I will fast for. If I eat at 10 o'clock, then I certainly won't be consuming food at 10 o'clock. It probably won't be till 2 the next day. So fasting becomes incredibly easy, especially when you implement it throughout the night. 12 hours, I'd regard as the sort of minimum, entry point for a fast. So if you do consume food at, say, 8 p.m., wake up at 8 a.m. and you've just done a 12-hour fast. Perfect. 16 is arguably optimal. But, there are studies out there which show 18, 24 and beyond. But what I'd say is just consume foods to satiety and try to implement fasting that suits you. You can also try skipping meal times. So if you are finding it difficult to fast for that length of time, break your fast early. So break your fast an hour before you would typically have your breakfast or lunch. The next day, move it out an hour. And by doing this, you'd also trick ghrelin, which is a satiety hormone, or a hormone that blocks satiety. So by doing this will allow you to combat these cravings and things for food, because the body will elicit this response about 10 to 15 minutes before we are due to consume food. And it'll tell us that it'll basically prime the body to be hungry, ready for this meal. And this is why we're ravenous at the same time every day. I don't eat at the same time every day. Every day I eat is different because I eat intuitively. But lots of benefits to fasting for not just athletic performance, but health and well-being as well. So highly recommend the fasting, unless you are perimenopausal or coming into menopause. I would recommend not fasting. In fact, quite the opposite. I'd recommend not fasting for longer than 12 hours. Eat to the circadian rhythm. So this is eating breakfast around 8 a.m., having a snack maybe around 11, 12, lunch, if you like, sort of 1 to 2. Every 3 to 4 hours, eating something small, because we need progesterone, which is upregulated by the adrenals in lieu of the ovaries being able to do this. But we need to make sure we're not suffering with adrenal fatigue, and fasting causes adrenal fatigue because it turns over 8 times throughout the day. So we need to constantly be in almost a semi-fed state, if you want, but certainly not a fasted state. So fasting not recommended for perimenopausal or menopausal women.
What about pregnant women?
Pregnant, again, this personally, I'd say no, because we want to be in this fed state.
Yes.
But there's a lot of conflict in evidence in regards to some very big speakers in the world that will say that we need to put carbohydrate in. There's some that will say to put carbohydrate in a week before their period in order to ramp up progesterone. Again, I don't think it's not carbohydrate, it's energy. And I don't want to use the term calories because we don't work with calories. Anybody listening to us previously would know that we don't work with calories per se.
It's energy and nutrients. Energy and nutrients.
Exactly. So as long as we are in this fed state, so fasting isn't recommended a week before your period either. But we do not need carbohydrate as long as we're in this fed state. And saturated fats, we need saturated fats are key. So the fats that we are told to avoid, we need these saturated fats. Saturated fats are the healthiest fats for us. So yeah, a little bit of advice there on fasting. I mean, we could go to town on other things in regards to menopausal women, I think, but that's probably a podcast for another day. But fasting is a fantastic tool. But go on.
Yeah. Can I just add a proviso? If you're underweight, you shouldn't fast, even if you're after therapeutic benefits of other things. You've got to not be underweight and eat enough. Because if you feel that therapeutic fasting is trumping everything else, how is your body repairing? How is it being therapeutic if you haven't got enough of the basic nutrients? So, and I definitely, the reason I'm actually going to segue into the next question, if you don't mind, Richard. The reason I say that is because when we do a bit of coaching, I get that every so often. Someone will say, I had this very recently, a very, very lean person said, I want to do some therapeutic fasting because I want to fix my thyroid. And I went, whoa, hang on. If you were fixing a brick wall, you'd need bricks. You need some mortar. You need some energy to do it. If you're underfed, you're under-muscled, you are going to struggle to actually get any benefit from therapeutic fasting. So first thing is, let's get you to a weight. Let's get you to a muscle mass, body composition that is suitable for you. And then we can talk about ways of healing. So there's a question. Do each of you offer online nutritional / exercise coaching? I'll let you go first, sir.
Yeah, I guess we both do to a degree, isn't it? I mean, this is more of your bag as far as the one-to-ones. It may be something that I'm getting back into possibly in the future, but I mean, you offer that as a service now, isn't it? I mean, mine is predominantly web-based. We put this advice out there for everyone to see, but I would recommend Stephen for any specific coaching for sure. I'm always there for advice, and this is why I'm on the podcast with you, isn't it? But the coaching for me is unfortunately is had to take a backward step. I do offer Zoom sessions, so consultation sessions, and that's available through the website. Anybody can sign up to that, and it's listed as 30 minutes, but it generally takes an hour because I do like to talk.
I laughed as soon as you said 30 minutes. It's like, no way. But
for ongoing coaching, yeah, Stephen's the way for that accountability. So I gladly offer advice and pointers to follow. But what I find is that, accountability is a big key. If it's accountability you're looking for and someone to touch base with on a daily or weekly basis, then Stephen is the man for that. But I'm more than happy to do a 30-minute consultation and point people in the right direction also.
Yeah, that's very magnanimous of you, Richard, and thank you for that. Thank you. Yes, I do coaching. I do online fasting coaching, carnivore coaching, keto, low carb. That's what I do. You can book me at the ukcarnivore.com and /booking if you want to. I just flashed up Richard's Instagram if you want to contact Richard. But I do exercise programs, and I haven't had a chance to talk to Richard actually, but I was going to show him one of my programs and see if he was interested in being part of that. But anyway, so yes, I do exercise programs. There are different ways of doing this. One is you'll get an exercise program to follow. You get a daily calendar, an email that tells you what your program is going to be, what your workout session is going to be. Tells you when to rest as well, which isn't rest. Of course, it's a recovery day. It's part of the program. You're not having a day off. And then the workouts are basically illustrated. So it will show you someone doing a shoulder press or doing a bicep curl or whatever, and you just follow it. And it's timed. And we do it whether, if you say you want to do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, then as long as I think that's suitable, then you'll get that Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and it has built-in progression, those sort of things. If you're one of those that likes to watch videos, then I also have a video program which I call ultra conditioning, and it's very minimal equipment. Some of it's no equipment whatsoever. So yeah, all that. I don't want this to be an advert. So, but that was a question. It wasn't a plant, by the way. So yes, hopefully that has answered that. Right, now then, let's go in. So Adam's putting some great comments in there, by the way, which is good. People think it's a weight loss tool, but it's so much more than that when we talk about fasting, and it gives you more benefits mentally than physically. And I think that's true. Many people say that fasting makes them feel supercharged. Right. How about this one? Does muscle have memory? So my little two penneth, because I do talk about this, muscle memory is like the act of committing a specific motor task into the memory of the muscle through repetition. So many people think, well, it's sitting on the couch for 5 years, coming back to bench press, and you're back where you started. But actually, muscle memory is a training response. If you're looking at going in the gym and you're doing bicep curls, you are training your body to recruit a certain amount of motor neurons to do that. And to do that with repetition and to improve. So that's like the short-term muscle memory. You are teaching your body that. Okay, so that's the first thing. And I'm sure Richard will disagree with all this, but it's totally fine. We don't have to agree with absolutely everything. So they don't really remember anything. It's just like a trained response. Like if I pick up this glass, and then I put it down, then I pick it up again, I know that that's going to happen through repetition. So when you look at a baby, for instance, that stumble through the world, don't they? But they get better at everything. So that is the real muscle memory. But then what you're probably talking about is what I just said. 6 years ago, you gave up training. When you come back to the gym, is your muscle going to remember everything? And does that give you a benefit over a beginner? And I would say that is pretty much true. They do experiments with mice. The problem with mice is you can't train a mouse to do a bench press. All right. So whenever they look at muscle memory with mice, for instance, it's always on a wheel. So always to do with running and exercise like that. So it's very difficult to prove this. But anecdotally, if you've trained many years ago and you come back to training, it does seem like you have a better chance of success and somebody who's a complete beginner. So, but the complete beginner does get that wonderful honeymoon period where they've never trained before. They start to train, and within 6 weeks, they can't believe how good it is because they start seeing a difference. So there's a yin and yang to it. If you've trained before and you come back after a long break, then there is a sort of memory when it comes to muscle motor recruitment and how your neurological function works. But there's also the thing that isn't talked about, and that's disappointment, because you can come back and not do what you used to do and be a little bit demoralized, actually. So that's my two penneth. But I'm sure Richard will give me or give you, Dawn, much more detail than that.
No, I think you've covered all the bases there, to be honest, Stephen. Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, sounds good.
Oh,
nothing to add.
Thank you. That's good. Have we got time for a couple more questions?
Fire away.
Right. So the question I had, and I flashed it up on the screen just so I didn't forget, was you eat late at night, and a couple of people have private messaged me. Does that not cause a problem with people with acid reflux if you eat late at night?
So I used to suffer severely with acid reflux. Generally, acid reflux is a mechanism from lectins in the foods that we eat. Funny enough, this is something that we've implemented with Phil Taylor this week. Suffered severely with acid reflux. Now, the lectins in certain foods bind to mast cells in the gut. They cause the release of histamine. It's this histamine, the release, that causes this acid reflux. When we take lectins out, i.e. eat a piece of steak, or eggs. I don't suffer with this acid reflux, and I had a message from Phil this week saying that I've been acid reflux free, and he suffered for many years with acid reflux. So no, I don't get any issue at all personally, and I used to suffer severely with acid reflux from the foods that I consumed. Bread was obviously one of them. There's other foods that contain lectins as well: tomatoes, bell peppers, lots of other so-called ketogenic friendly type foods. This is why I've gravitated into carnivore. And this is what was causing Phil's issues. He used to like tomatoes, and what he said to me was, "Oh, I'm sure a little bit will be okay." And it's, well, you've got to, at the end of the day, whatever lifestyle you decide to live, as long as you understand the possible implications of the foods you consume, and your body can deal with them, then yes. I mean, being dirty ketogenic is still healthier than stuffing your face with McDonald's and Burger King every day and processed foods. But it's these incremental changes that take you further down this rabbit hole. So I agreed for Phil to try the tomatoes, and he said, "I won't use many, I'll just use a few." 10 minutes after, I'm having severe acid reflux. So we took them out, and he is now completely tomato free. So you've got to work with people on this as well. I mean, he could have put a few in and been happy with it, and we could have continued along this path, because telling someone to be that strict with their diet, not that I find it restrictive, but I mean, to go from eating a wide range of foods to consuming just steak and eggs and animal proteins. Many feel that it's a restrictive thing and a big step, even though what I usually say to these people when they tell me that they find it restrictive is I'll ask them what they eat for breakfast, and they'll go away and tell me. I'll ask them what they eat for lunch and tea, etc. And once they've given me that list, I'll ask them the question, well, if that's what you eat on a Monday, what do you eat on a Tuesday? And, well, it's generally the same thing, they say. I eat the same thing for breakfast. I eat the same thing for lunch. We're creatures of habit. We tend to consume the same foods and do the same actions. We go shopping in the same place. We may pick up the odd, treat or cheat, if you like. Obviously we don't, but I mean, someone living a normal, if you want to call it a normal lifestyle, instead of picking up a Mr. Kipling cake, they might pick up something else instead, isn't it? But the food that they cook on a weekly basis is generally the same. They'll eat the same food on a Monday and a Tuesday and a Wednesday. So when you factor that into the foods that we eat, then it isn't that restrictive. I eat steak most days. I love steak. I get different cuts of steak. I cook it in different ways. I love king prawns. I eat eggs most days. Eggs can be boiled, fried. You can have them in an omelette, scrambled eggs. So there's different ways there. I use the scrambled egg almost as vegetables. So I'll have a big steak and I'll have a big batch of scrambled egg. And that is my veg in effect. I'll eat lamb, chicken. I'll eat pork. I'll eat all animal proteins, fish, even cheese. But I do focus predominantly on my beef more than anything, because I believe that is far healthier for you for a number of reasons, which I won't bore you with today. But yeah, I've probably gone off track again there, Stephen. But but it's yeah, I certainly don't find it restrictive, and I think that when you come away from those lectins, which was the initial question, wasn't it? Looking back at it again.
Acid reflux and eating late at night. That was the original question.
What I would say is to try it. Take out the foods that contain lectins. Just eat meat before bed and see how you feel. And that's not telling you to eat late at night if it doesn't suit you. It just suits me. I cannot sleep if I go to bed on an empty stomach. I find I heal and repair better, and I feel better for it. Everything in regards to my health feels better if I eat just before bed. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's immediately before bed. It could be an hour before. But I'm certainly not one of these people that doesn't eat past 7 o'clock and all this rubbish, Yeah. If I'm hungry, I'll eat. If I'm not hungry, I don't. But it certainly works well for me. Take those lectins out and I don't think you'll have a problem.
That's cool. Thank you for that. I noticed you look at your watch, Richard. Have you got time to do any more questions, or do you need to go?
Yeah, we can jump through this one if you want quickly.
Okay. Can you see that there's other questions, or is it just that we've got time just for this one? It's up to you.
Yeah, there we are. We'll see how we get on, shall we? There we
All
are.
right. If someone on the carnivore diet can't or won't eat eggs or liver, would it be wise to supplement with methylfolate?
I'm not a big fan of supplementing with things when it comes to things that we can get through our diet. I mean, beef will contain methylfolate. We need folate for methylation and ultimately the production of something called SAMe, which is an antioxidant. It's responsible for lots of things within the body. That's probably a podcast for a different day. I mean, my question would be initially there, Matthew, why won't you eat eggs or liver? Or are you asking for someone else? I've got a feeling this is for someone else.
You know Matthew, do you?
Yeah. So yeah, if you can just chuck in there, Matthew, was it for yourself or someone else? But I mean, eggs. Some people can't consume eggs because they are allergic to something called ovocobalamin within the egg, or ovomucoid, sorry, not cobalamin, which is usually the protein within the egg that causes issues. But it generally, what I find when you adopt a carnivore lifestyle, that you can generally put eggs back in. Liver, I understand that a lot of people can't eat liver. It is a harsh eat, but we can get these through other forms of offal as well, heart and kidney, and other foods we can get folate from as well. So I mean, if I was going to supplement, I would be supplementing with liver supplements over folic acid or any methylfolate supplement. But the easy answer is just eat some liver, isn't it? I mean, my cheat now, iced decaf Americano with cream would be right. Sorry, I thought that was the answer to the question that I was just looking for there. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of supplementing with methylfolate. I don't know about you, Stephen, but I think that there are other options out there.
Yeah, yes. I actually have one client recently who did supplement with it, but that's really rare, and there was good reasons. I mean, methylation is sort of like a signpost. It's just a group of molecules that are added to proteins or DNA, and as they proliferate, basically the methylation group will tell the DNA what to do. Basically, I mean, it's like a signpost. Think of it like that, and it can be a cofactor when you're talking about things in the blood-brain barrier. So there may be reasons to supplement, but as you probably can tell, it's very, very nuanced and unlikely to be needed. So I would say you need to look at the presentation of any symptoms before you do any supplementation, and there might be other ways to resolve it with food before you get into supplements. I just think we need to keep things really simple. Yes, there may be cases, but often it's genetic. There might be a genetic defect, but anyway, I'm just really, really worried about Richard's time. So do you want to call it a day, or do you want to do a little bit more?
Yeah, let's just smash through a few more.
All right, okay.
Let's get through some more.
This one's right up your street. I just had the person is called Saved. Saved by what? Anyway, hi. I just had my cholesterol checked and my APO A1 and is APO A1 2.5 and APO B is 2.114. Triglycerides 0.89, HDL 2.47, LDL 9.5, total 12.4. Strict carnivore for 15 months. Is that bad?
Let's take a look. So let me run a calculation. Let me open up my
Firstly,
calculator.
while you're looking at that, let me do my disclaimer. This is not medical advice. All right, so we're not replacing any medical healthcare professional. We don't know you from Adam. Don't know your history, so we can give you reference ranges, what it looks like, that sort of thing. Just give you information for entertainment and information purposes, and you can then do further research. Go back to your healthcare provider with that extra bit of research.
Yeah, so the key factors here to look at are the triglycerides. 0.89, super low. HDL 2.47, which is high, and LDL 9.5, perfect. Total, I'm not concerned about, but basically, HDL is high, triglycerides are low, and the triglyceride to HDL ratio is coming in at 0.36. Anything below 1 is absolutely incredible. So for me, if that were my profile, I'd be incredibly pleased with that. But again, as Stephen said, this isn't medical advice, but I would be very, very pleased with that.
So would I. Yes, I would kill for a triglyceride HDL ratio of that's that good, to be honest. But yeah, so you do need to take that information further. And of course, you can do coaching. You can reach out and do further questions. Right, that's it. I think we're going to stop there because an hour and 12 minutes is pretty much a pretty good day's work, I think, on a Sunday when it's really hot. Thank you, everybody that's thanking us in the comments. Matthew's just saying his cheat. And the reason I put this on, because I want to finish with this. Do you know, Richard, if you were cheating in a race, would you be cheating to make yourself better? To win it, would you? To give you a chance of winning?
If I was cheating in a race, as in...
Yeah. Would the purpose of cheating be so you could win?
I don't see the benefit in if you the only person you're cheating is yourself, isn't it?
Yeah,
So,
the reason I'm saying this is if you are trying to win the race of carnivore and health, you're not cheating, you're sabotaging. Because if you're cheating, that means you want to be better. You want to lead. You want to improve. Sorry, Matthew, I'm being very cheeky here. So you sabotage yourself now with iced decaf Americano with cream. Is that what you're saying? I don't know. But yeah, it used to be a big bag of white chocolate cookies. So yeah, I'm only teasing you because actually that's my go-to drink is decaf Americano with cream. And yes, iced recently in the sunlight and the heat. I've been doing that, but I don't think of it as a cheat, by the way. I do think of it as like, probably shouldn't do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. So and it's certainly better than a big bag of white chocolate cookies, certainly.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with a decaf Americano with double cream for sure. That's I wouldn't even regard that as a cheat. So if that's a cheat to you, then awesome work. But yeah, I've cut down considerably on coffee lately due to research into a compound called acrylamide. Something we can speak about next week maybe. But I do love drinking coffee. And after that bike ride yesterday that I was out with with Mark and James, two friends of mine, we came back to the shop and I had a coffee with double cream, and and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So yeah. If that's the one thing you've got to worry about, then you do not have anything to worry about. So awesome work. Keep that up.
Yes, and that's what I was saying. I wouldn't call that a cheat, but I was trying to broaden it out. When you people talk about cheat meals, they're not cheat meals, they're sort of sabotage meals.
Yeah, I think
that's certainly
really quickly onto that. I mean, it's a lot of the research that I've been doing lately into neurotransmitter synthesis in the brain and how food addiction is, it is a real thing. I think it's important to acknowledge as well that to not consume these foods is, the people regard as a cheat food is fantastic. That's the best way to do things. But if you have to deviate from what everybody else is telling you, for whatever reason that may be, and that's the one thing that you need to keep you on the straight and narrow as a whole, then, I don't want to say I promote it, but don't beat yourself up over it. If that one thing per week is what keeps you on that straight and narrow for the other 6.5 days of the week, then that is still considerably better than going back to, the previous way of living. So it's working with a wide range of people recently. I've come to understand that this food addiction is severe. I mean, it's easy for you and I to say, don't eat this and don't eat that, and you should be strict. And it goes so far way deeper than just, don't eat something, because as we discussed previously, the neurotransmitters in the brain have a massive impact on food addiction, and it's coming off a drug that we are hardwired to chase, in regards to dopamine. But yeah, don't if you have an off day, don't beat yourself up. Just get back on the wagon the next day. And this is all about the rule and not the exception. If you are consuming keto carnivore foods for 29 days out of 30, then you're on a winner. If you go on holiday and have a bad week, that's fine. Get back on it as soon as you come back. So it's got to be sustainable as well. So don't be so hard on yourself. I think it's important to understand the benefits, to not, as you say, sabotaging, because sugars it is a drug, and when you have a taste for that drug again, it's easy to fire up all of these receptors and stimulations within the brain. So you are better not having that cheat or sabotage, as you say, isn't it? Because it is difficult to overcome it. But if you feel that you do need those, then I don't beat people up over it. It's all about the rule and not the exception.
Yeah, and I think that I was just being a little bit lighthearted there.
Yeah,
but
I know.
But that is true. I mean, I say that to people certainly when we start coaching, they will say, "Is it okay to have a cup of coffee?" And I always say, virtually what you just said, Richard, is if it's the game changer, if it is you're going to be carnivore except for 1 cup of coffee or 3 cups of coffee, then have your cups of coffee, because the rest of the time you're 99% ahead of the rest of the population and doing better than you've been doing. And as Matthew said, he used to have a bag of white chocolate cookies. So wow, a nice decaf Americano with cream is a million times better.
Awesome work, Matthew. Yeah, fantastic.
But I was just trying to get across that, when people talk about cheat meals, and I see that on Instagram ever such a lot, I'm having my cheat meal today, and it becomes a regular thing. And then you think, well, actually, you're sabotaging yourself because, well, you look at, some influencers, they say, I'm going to have 50 grams of carbs this week. And then within 6 months, it's 400 grams of carbs. And it's just that slippery slope. So I just always say, try not to think of it as a cheat, because I think that's putting you ahead. I just think it's going off piste for a bit, And if someone does have a bad, like you say, go on holiday, I always say this as well. If you're in Italy and someone's making homemade pasta, and you want to eat Italian homemade pasta, then eat Italian homemade pasta, because when you come back to England or wherever you're, going home to, you're going to regret that, because there was your one-off chance to eat a sort of authentic homemade cuisine, and you didn't take it because you wanted to be a bit too strict. So, yeah, it's great. Thank you, Richard, for your time.
No problem at all. Thank you, and thank the listeners.
Thank you for tuning in. Okay, I'm going to end the broadcast.
Thank you, guys.
And we'll see you next Sunday.